Welcome to another edition of the Voice of Palestine, Voice of the Palestinian People. It's May 2nd, 2013, and I'm your co-host, Ahmed Kabbour. This week we'll be talking with Rabab Abdulhadi, Senior Scholar of the Arab and Muslim Ethnicities and Diasporas Initiative at the College of Ethnic Studies in San Francisco State University. Rabab will be one of the guest speakers at the upcoming Shatat Conference this weekend in Vancouver. Actually, it starts tomorrow. Good evening to you, Rabab, and welcome to the Voice of Palestine.
Thank you. Good evening, Hannah. I'm very happy to be here.
Could you please tell us a bit about yourself? You're Palestinian, I gather.
Yes, I am. I actually was born and raised in the West Bank city of Nablus, and I go back many times a year, actually. So I still have family there, and I'm in constant communication with them. I'm also, besides being a scholar, I'm a scholar activist.
Yeah.
So I'm very much involved in community organizing, in working around questions of justice for Palestine and around the world, because justice is indivisible, as we all agree on.
That's true. That's true. So what motivated you to do support work in general, including other causes?
Well, because I do think that the question of Palestine is about justice. It's not just because we're Palestinians we're doing the work. Because we are Palestinians. We know about Palestine the best. We've experienced what's going on. We understand what colonialism means for people. We have first-hand knowledge about what's going on in Palestine. But at the same time, what's happening in Palestine is similar in many ways to what's happening elsewhere in the world, especially in terms of settler colonial regimes. And the issues people are fighting for are similar. People are fighting for justice. So if we are going to be for justice in Palestine and for Palestine, I think we should be, by extension, for justice anywhere else in terms of any other struggle.
Yeah.
So this is the way I see the connection.
Yeah, and including other liberation movement in the third.
Yes, there are other liberation movements, including in North America, for instance. You have here Idle No More. In Canada, the struggle of First Nations, which in the United States we say indigenous struggle, which is the same as the struggle of the indigenous Palestinians back in Palestine. It's not very different from that.
Okay, so we're going to have this conference, and you are one of the main guest speakers at the conference. Could you tell us and tell our listeners a bit about the importance of such a conference?
Yes.
Considering, we don't have really any real representation anymore. The PLO used to represent us in the 60s and 70s and maybe 80s, but with the sellout Oslo Accord, we don't have really any representation. So could you tell us the importance of it?
Yes, I think in general, even before we talk about the question of representation, as we both know, and some of your listeners may know, that a majority of the Palestinians actually do not live on the land of historic Palestine, because the majority have been expelled and uprooted in 1948, Nakba, which means catastrophe in English. When Israel was founded, it uprooted the Zionist militias, basically uprooted Palestinians from their land and forced them out at gunpoint, literally at gunpoint, and almost close to a million, between 750,000 to 800,000 Palestinians were basically uprooted and expelled in 1948. They became refugees. Today there are more Palestinians who are living outside of Palestine in the diaspora, whether it is in the Arab world, in refugee camps, or it is throughout the world. We're scattered all over the world. So in general, it's really important for us to be able to meet with each other, to hear each other's conditions, what are the various specific realities that Palestinians live under in different places, and also to come together to think about how can we advance our struggle for justice, how can we understand what's going on, how we can connect with each other. So that's even in general, that's even before Oslo, before any developments for diasporic population, it's really important to connect with each other as often as possible and to understand each other and to work with around the same goal. Sometimes you're in a conference that Palestinians come, if they don't speak Arabic, they will be speaking different languages from different contexts that they come from. So even unifying kind of like the framework that we're talking about, what we're thinking, what do we understand, what do we mean, is really important. On top of that, as you've said already, and since Oslo, the Palestinians have been fragmented even further, and there have been huge disappointment in the Palestinian leadership that has not delivered to the Palestinians, and many people did not believe that it will deliver, that Oslo will deliver, but some people did believe that Oslo will deliver. But now we are very clear, since 1993 until today, what is it, 20 years, it's very clear that it's not only hasn't delivered, but actually has pushed our struggle. Many of the gains that we've made pushed them backwards. So it's really important for us to also think together. How can we work together? What do we think about the PLO? Is something viable about it? Is something not viable about it? How do we relate to the various new formations that emerged in Palestine after the PLO was founded? How do we relate to the various claims and demands and struggles of Palestinians inside Israel? Israel as a creation of the Zionist movement is a settler colonial regime that's by definition racist because it's exclusivist. It's supposed to be exclusivist Jewish state, and it acts as such, and there is increasing discrimination and racism against Palestinians inside Israel who are Israeli citizens. So it's getting worse. So we really need to kind of think about all sorts of creative ways. How do we address all these issues? Because what's happening with the Palestinian leadership, it actually only now speaks about the questions of the West Bank, rarely even about Gaza. So we do need to think about how can we address the comprehensiveness and the totality of the Palestinian experiences. So that's why conferences of this sort are really, really important. And this particular one of the Shatat, which is the Diasporic Palestinian Conference, is really important. I also think it's really exciting that it has been organized and by a group of young Palestinian activist organizers who have taken it upon themselves to put on such a huge and very successful, I think, an undertaking.
Yeah. So, the discussion will be around how to go forward and what's the road to achieve liberation. Do you think the existing structure might be viable, or you think we need a new formation and start from scratch like some people are?
I actually don't think that we should start from scratch. I don't believe in throwing out the baby with the bathwater. I believe that when the Palestinian resistance movement emerged in the 60s, the resistance has started immediately before the Nakba and after the Nakba. But specifically after 1967, there has been the emergence of the modern Palestinian resistance movement. And there were many goals of that movement that have inspired not only the Palestinian people, but people seeking their freedom and self-determination, justice around the world. The Palestinian movement has been an inspiration, and it has had always an internationalist element and lens. There were a lot of goals at that time and a lot of principles that were laid out that I believe that the PLO has not fulfilled those. So my suggestions, my ideas, and we are going to basically have a very healthy debate about do we agree, do we not agree, that one is we really need to go back and think about those goals and that strategy for liberation that was laid out then and see where did we go wrong, where did we go right, how can we make sure that we do not make the mistakes again, how do we make sure that we are trying to build upon them. In addition to that, I think it's really important that now the PLO represented historic groups that some of which are not really as representative of Palestinians as they should, including groups that had relations with some Arab regimes and so on. At the same time, we do have newly emergent forces that have have come about, for instance, Hamas and Islamic Jihad, that were formed in the first Intifada, that are not represented in the PLO. And so you cannot really talk about a representative body without main groups who have the support of a lot of Palestinians that are not represented. That's one thing. Then there is also Palestinians inside Israel. They have not been represented in the PLO. What do we do about that? Do we actually say that we are our representation of the Palestinians ends at the green line of the Israeli state, or are these also Palestinians? They're not allies. They're actually part of our people, and they should be represented. Of course, I realize that there are maybe legalistic issues and so on around, because Israel has basically criminalized, even commemorating the Nakba is criminalized in Israel, and people can be sent to prison as a result of that. But we need to be thinking creatively outside of the box, and think about how can we achieve a formula that takes into consideration the complexity of the Palestinian reality, which meaning that we're scattered all over the world. And it's really, how do we even begin to think about being, let's say, represented in a democratic participatory manner? And I'm not talking about the democracy of the United States or the Canadian government. I mean the one that they are actually pushing down people's throats, because to them, once you go to the ballot box, it means everything is resolved. And that's not the solution. That's not what I'm talking about. When I'm talking about real representation of the population, how do we really need to come to, I mean, I don't have specific, detailed, logistical formula, but I do think that we need to think about being inclusive. We need to think about being inclusive not only of political groups, but also of the various religiosities, of the gender, of the sexuality, of the class, of the race, of people who are coming from different parts of the world, and so on. We need to think about all of that in order for us to be able to really see that, relatively speaking, we actually do have a representative body that can speak for the Palestinians. Because the PLO historically has spoken for the Palestinians until it went and signed the Oslo Accord. When it signed the Oslo Accord, it broke the historic agreement, or the historic promise of a liberation movement that stopped being a liberation movement or a resistance movement to colonialism and became accommodating to colonialism. So how do we think about a Palestine liberation organization, not necessarily Palestine liquidation or accommodation organization? So I think all of these questions are really important to think, and I think this conference would be one important step, very important step towards, because there have been a lot of discussions all over the world and in many, many areas around also what do we do? What do we do now? What do we think about? I do think also that there is difference between the PA, the Palestinian Authority, and the PLO, and I think it's a huge problem that Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen, continues to be the president of the Palestinian Authority and the chair of the PLO, because these two things, there is contradiction between the two, and he should not be the head of both. So there needs to be severance between the two. You know, the PA, I mean, the people, it also has its own complexities, and how do we think about what's going on with it? Because Oslo, Israel has already violated every single aspect of Oslo. The problem is the Palestinian leadership, the PA, continues to hold on to Oslo as if it is something that protects its back. Yeah. In a way, it does. I mean, the Palestinian Authority would not have existed had there not been Oslo. Oslo created the Palestinian Authority. It's a byproduct of it. But at the same time, because of that, then there are many articles in Oslo that do not speak to the legitimate claims and the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, that talk about the right of return. Palestinian refugees have the right of return, which is, and it's not only an inalienable right, it's also universal. It's also upheld by the United Nations. I mean, there are so many various legal and moral and ethical grounds for that, right? Mm-hmm. That how is the Palestinian Authority going to be doing that when the Palestinian Authority says we are only going to accept a state in the historic borders of the West Bank and Gaza? And now they talk about minor or some kind of modification and so on, because Israel is imposing the issue of the settlements, and the Palestinian Authority is not fighting back as much as it should be fighting back about that. Yeah. If you're going to talk about that, then what happens to the Palestinians inside Israel? What happens happens to Palestinian refugees? What happened to their right of return? So there are all these issues that, for that, I really think there needs to be severance between what the PLO is and what the Palestinian Authority is. The PLO, I mean, but not necessarily what it is now, or not necessarily only what it was historically, but with a different vision.
Yeah, because, I wanted to ask you, the charter, which really, even if we consider it the way it was passed in 1968, I believe, need to be amended anyway. But, with the PNC decision, the PNC in 1996, annulling the charter and confirming this annulment in 1998 under pressure of Netanyahu and Clinton, and the Israeli gun, they annulled all that. So the question I would ask, what kind of liberation movement is this that doesn't have a charter, and they promised to amend it within 6 months or whatever, and it's, now it's 16 years.
Right. I mean, I agree with you. I think it's very problematic, but don't also forget that not everybody was, even of the Palestinian National Council, was given permission and allowed to go to Gaza. Some people were, but not everybody even. And yes, they did have a quorum, but at the same time, to be able to kind of change the charter. But quorum means with those who are present, but also there was a huge opposition, and there were people who cried when this was, the charter was changed. So a lot of us, and I think, I would include both of us probably in that. But we don't recognize the step that has been kind of like shoved down the throats of the Palestinians, despite themselves and so on. The other issue is that the Palestinian National Council, yes, it was created as the Palestinian Parliament in exile, but it never had elections. So when you want to talk about the Palestinian National Council and you say it is really a representative body, it is representative because Palestinians decided, the same with the PLO, Palestinians decided that this is our sole and legitimate representative. But this decision, people go into it every single day thinking, is this the body that represents me or not? At the height, when the Palestinians under Israeli colonial rule were dying in order for them to say, I support the PLO, and when in 1976 Palestinians voted in municipal elections for PLO slates, they were risking their lives, literally. I'm not even talking euphemistically. That is when people seriously said, yes, the PLO is our sole and legitimate representative. Today, there are a lot of questions. When you ask anybody, does the PLO represent? They say, which PLO are you talking about? Are you talking about the one in 68? Are you talking about the one that won the Battle of Al-Karama? Are you talking about the one of 73? Are you talking about the one in 1978 when they came back and unified themselves? Are you talking about the one in Jordan in 1984? You're talking about Algiers. Which one you're talking about? Or you're talking about the one that basically gathered in Gaza in 1996 and abrogated most of the Charter's articles? Which PLO we're talking about? So I think we really need to, I think there is the idea of a liberation organization that represents all of us is still very valid. I think it's very valid, and I think it has a lot of historical currency, and it has a lot of strength in our imagination and our hearts. The practical reality proposes different things that we really need to think about and not accept that blindly, and kind of like hold them accountable. Because if you want to be my leadership, I also have rights. You want to lead me, you want me to abide, have allegiance to you. At the same time, I also want to hold you accountable. How are you leading? And I think that's one of the things that a lot of the times we engage in, but we did not engage in as much as we should. A big part of that is because Palestinians were kind of concerned about we're being attacked from all directions and so on. Maybe we should not be discussing this and so, which I think it was a big mistake when people were advocating that. I think there is nothing wrong with open discussion and being very overt about it and being very transparent about it, and I think it's really necessary. Today it's even more urgent than ever.
Back to the Palestinian National Council that was held in Gaza. I agree with you. I mean, it doesn't represent you, it doesn't represent me, and because, if you want to do any democratic decision making. You can't do that under the gun of the colonizer.
Right, exactly.
And the supervision of the colonizer. I mean,
that erases the whole question of liberation, of course. Yeah, definitely.
So, I mean, the whole thing is a farce and a joke, really.
Right. That's why people don't recognize it. They say, okay, so go ahead and do whatever you want. We're not buying it. It doesn't.
So the other question is why the PLO is the sacred cow? I mean, why can't we move out of the box and try to? Because why I'm saying that, because I don't think Abbas is going to give up this PLO. He's going to be sitting on it till day immemorial.
Right. Yeah. I'm not saying it's a sacred cow, and I'm not saying that Abbas would want to, because for Abbas, the Palestinian Authority gives him the legal grounds, but the PLO gives him the moral and ethical high grounds. And that is something that it is immaterial, but it is something that you cannot cash anywhere. It is very, very valuable commodity for him, right? Mm-hmm. But the PLO is also the achievement of the Palestinian people. I mean, people died for that. People have suffered for it. People have gone to prison for it. The Palestinian mayors who were elected in 1976 and again in 1980, there were bombs placed in their cars. Bassam Shaka lost his legs, right? Ibrahim al-Tawil Karim Khalaf lost his foot. Ibrahim al-Tawil was just saved because they called him right before, and they said, the mayor of El Bire, be careful, don't get into your car because there is a bomb in it, and he was saved. But the people really, really struggled and suffered a lot for that. So I think this is our achievement as a people. Now, I'm not, and this is one thing. The other thing is that I would want to know, if we are going to throw away the PLO, what do we have as an alternative? I don't want to throw away what I have now until I have something that substitutes for it. So I would like to hold on to what we have, because we did have a lot of recognition for it. We did have a lot of struggle around it and so on. And I think that we can think about ways that cannot be reformed or not. There are some people who say, no, it cannot be reformed. Some people think this is it. We cannot be reformed. Let's start from scratch. I want to hear, if we want to start from scratch, what are the formulas there? Before I start going down that road, I want to know that what we're going to start from scratch is actually better than what we can, salvage and rescue now.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's okay. I think there's a lot of problems with it, but I'm still not 100% convinced that we should just throw it away.
Yeah, it's not really throwing it away, because this PLO, by signing, I know it wasn't a democratic decision, and Arafat jammed it through the executive committee and the Palestine National Council, but it lost its legitimacy once it signed the Oslo process, which is counter to everything.
I agree. Yeah, but don't forget, there are a lot of people who actually thought that Oslo was going to be a possible thing. There were the lines were drawn halfway. There were a lot of people who supported Oslo because they supported Arafat. I mean, people did not come and say, what do you think about Oslo? Because if they were to ask, what do you think about Oslo, majority of the people would say, no, this is not really a good thing. But if people were asked, do you want to end the occupation? They will say yes, including, I've interviewed people in many refugee camps in Lebanon, for instance, and when I would ask them, what do you think about, let's say there will be a state, just a state in the West Bank and Gaza, what happens to you? And they say, well, yes, it doesn't really address everything we want, but we want another part of the Palestinian people to have some freedom and so on. So I'm kind of I really don't think that justice can be divided. I don't think it is indivisible. You can't do justice for some part and not justice for the other and so on. And it's morally, it doesn't hold up as an argument, or even logically. Not even if you don't want to suspend the moral aspect and you want to talk about pragmatic realpolitik, it also doesn't work anyway, because people are not satisfied, so they're going to continue revolting anyway, right? But I think it is a part of the problem is that historically a lot of the Palestinians basically also, so the reason people actually some people went reluctantly, some people enthusiastically to Oslo, some people were against it, but the people who were enthusiastic because they supported Arafat. And also there was a part of the Palestinian people that was not willing to even be critical. even say that this is something wrong. We need to have these debates. A lot of people were saying, "Oh, let's not spread our dirty laundry in public."
Yeah.
And like some of us were saying, if it's dirty laundry, it's dirty.
Yeah.
Whether you spread it or you don't spread it, it's still dirty, right? I mean, it doesn't make it clean, right?
Yeah.
And we really need to, and it's not about public performing in front of like the Western public or the American public or the Israeli public or whatever. It's us. We need to be holding ourselves accountable. We need to we deserve better. We as people deserve better because we sacrifice more.
And the other thing, we need to be transparent and honest with our supporters.
Right, exactly. 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 But I think there is a lot of the time people sort of covered up.
Yeah.
There is a lot of the time people were told that, you cannot be too critical and so on. This is really not good for the movement. And I think that was very destructive. That was not really healthy. So I think that the discussions and the debates and the arguments that we're having now are really, I'm invigorated by them. I know that we don't have a specific formula, say, okay, this is what we agree on. But I think it's good not to agree. Because if we agree, all of us, we become lazy intellectually. We also become lazy in terms of our own struggle, and we stop doing it. So I think it's good for us to continue challenging each other, having this argument, because and at the same time, we're having all these arguments about long-term strategy, but we're not stopping our day-to-day struggle either.
Yeah.
So I think we have a good, way of dealing with it. Where is it going to go? I don't know. But I'm not worried about that. I'm in the struggle because I believe it's just struggle. Yeah. I'm not in it just because I know tomorrow I will reap the results. I may not. Maybe our grandchildren will reap the results. But that does not invalidate the struggle itself.
Yeah. So this is the kind of debate we're going to have the next few days.
Right. Exactly.
And, hopefully, it's going to be respectful and valuable by taking really concrete steps forward, which is what we... So we really ask our listeners, to come and support, and especially our Palestinian brothers and sisters to come and join us in these debates, because at stake is our liberation and our existence.
Exactly. As a people, as an individuals, even our own dignity.
Yeah, that's true. The other thing I want to talk with you a bit about the role of the U.S. You live in the U.S. and
unfortunately,
broken promises from day one, from the Rogers plans, way back in the 70s, or early, even late 60s. The Rogers plan was in 69, I believe, was introduced. But broken promises, especially, we had a bitter experience in 1982 when Philip Habib promised... Brokered the agreement, brokered the agreement and broke the agreement by allowing the Phalangists and the Zionist forces to first enter Beirut, which was one of the conditions. The other thing, the protection of the civilians in the camps. So why should we, I don't understand this PLO leadership. How do they think? Why, if they didn't keep their word in 82, why should they expect the Americans would keep their word ever? And why in 2003, in 1993 with the Oslo Accord, why we trusted them?
I mean, that I have the same question as you. I don't know. I'm not in their heads because, and I would say, even if you don't historically, if you only study superficially the history of the United States of America, I mean, the United States of America is another settler colony. It's very similar to what Zionism has done in Israel, and they have broken so many agreements, even with the indigenous populations. You say First Nations in Canada. There have been so many agreements. They have not honored a single agreement they made, right? So they have a history. They're very consistent, by the way. I mean, it's not inconsistent. It's very consistent, and it doesn't really take much to look at it and see what's going on. So, but my only explanation of why is it that they trust, it's not because they trust, it's not about trust or not trust, it's because there are, I think, mutual interests. There are mutual interests. The United States of America is a very strong broker of Oslo. It was actually the only broker of Oslo, because the Palestinians were supposed to be at Madrid having an international meeting, because this was the internationally, historically we always thought that if we want to have any political resolution, it has to be multilateral, it has to be internationally, because that's where our strength is, because the people of the world and a lot of the governments of the world support us. This is not, we don't get supported when it's bilateral agreements, because we don't have the balance of forces. The Israelis do. Okay, so the thing is that the reason that it's not about trust. They talk about trust and so on. This is kind of like, I think, for mass consumption. But at the end of the day, if the United States does not support the Palestinian Authority, the Palestinian Authority would not exist. And we only saw it like, last week or the week before, when Salam Fayyad resigned, and it was the pressure of the United States trying to pressure Abbas to accept, to refuse his resignation and accommodate Salam Fayyad and so on. And both Abbas, by the way, I mean, just to remind ourselves that Abbas himself became prime minister because the United States pressured Yasser Arafat to change the Palestinian basic law and create the position of the prime minister in order for Abu Mazen to have it after Yasser Arafat was surrounded bil-Muqata'a in Ramallah during the invasion 2002 for a very long time, to the point where they cut off, the Israelis cut off the water, so they could not even flush the toilets in the Muqata'a, right? I mean, we remember all of this. Yeah. So Arafat was no longer useful. He had been expendable, so now they needed somebody who can be actually more useful, who's been all around, because Abu Mazen was the one who brokered and engineered Oslo anyway. I mean, we know that. He was the one who was doing the back channels. He's the one who had all these relations at the time when they were doing the whole performance at Madrid.
With the Wala, yeah.
Right, exactly. So the thing is that I think it's for them, it's a mutual interest. For them, they have a vested interest to keep the Palestinian Authority going. It is not about national goals. It's not about the Palestinian people. It's about the interest of this group. Select. I don't even want to call it a class, because I don't really think it's about it's not a uniform class. There is a group of people, this collective, that actually has a vested interest to continue the Oslo, to continue the structures that there are, because they are getting richer and they're having more influence and they're benefiting from it. So it's not about trusting or not trusting, because and the problem is that every single time, like last week or the week before, they had this agreement around UNESCO with the Israelis around Jerusalem, which is United States had also suggested it and brokered it, to go with the Israelis together to fix some things around Jerusalem, in return for the Palestinians, not for 6 months, not to come up with any critiques of Israel and what it's doing in violations in the occupied areas, when the PLO has become a member of UNESCO. So every single time you have an opportunity, it's sort of like every time the opportunity falls in their laps, they say, oh no, this is not an opportunity, we're going to do the opposite. And so it is not, I don't think they're really stupid. I don't think they don't know what they're doing. They have vested interests in order for them to maintain the structure, because they're benefiting from it. They don't, the project of liberation is not part of their project. They're not part of this project. So I think, even, this is a long time ago, people used to say this is nationalist, this is Watani, but it's not really that. It is not. It stopped a long time ago being about that. And I think we really need to be clear about it.
And the main issues, according to the Oslo Accord, was to be negotiated and finished in 5 years. Like the important issues, the refugees, the Jerusalem, and etc., borders and all that nonsense. And they never,
and they never will, and it will continue. It's all in order for them to kind of keep the Palestinians in this quagmire, negotiation for negotiations. And this is the whole thing. It's kind of, let's keep them talking, because it looks to the world that things are okay, because what happens is that Israel becomes normalized, not as a colonial power that it is, but as any other state. And when that happens, then all the pressure, all the stuff that we do, all the BDS, everything that we're doing becomes delegitimized.
And
so
and also while they're creating facts on the ground.
Exactly.
The settlements units are tripled since the Oslo.
I mean, the Jerusalem, the E1, they did not. They're going to continue building it. We had a few, the Bab al-Shams al-Karama, but then what? I mean, that's not enough. That's very small. They're great. It's excellent, incidents of resistance, but it's not enough.
Yeah, you mentioned that without the American support, there is no Palestinian Authority. Do you think without American support there is no Israel?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. I think definitely Israel will be weakened very, 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 very much without U.S. support. I mean, the United States gives to Israel $8 million per day, right? But I do think that in the process of their relationship, historically, U.S. is very important for Israel. The U.S. support is financial, militarily, politically, diplomatically, everything. It's really important for Israel. And the relationship has been consolidated more and more and more and more. And after 9/11, 2001, it even got more consolidated around the whole issue, that the way they see security, and et cetera, et cetera. Now, but Israel, in the meantime, has also developed its own security apparatus, a new security agency, its own computer capacity. It has its own thing. Now, would Israel survive for a very long time without U.S. aid and so on? I'm not sure. I definitely think it will weaken it a great deal, and then it will make it like any other country. So then it actually gets held up, and it gets held up accountable for the things that it does, like any other country on the face of the earth. Israel always says, why are you singling out? And we always say, because you single yourself out.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the ones who single. You're always saying we are untouchable, we should not be talked about, we should not be critiqued. And that's not what we're saying. We're saying that you should be like any other country on the face of the earth. You should be subjected to that kind of stuff. So it will weaken it a huge deal, but I do not see how the United States is going to stop being supportive of Israel. I mean, unless the U.S. ceases to be the country that it is and changes, then the whole world will be a different place. Not just for us.
The cliff is coming, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we hope. I mean, it's not going to happen by itself unless we struggle for it.
Not overnight either.
Right.
And not while the Arab regimes are basically still supporting the economy of the U.S.
Right.
I don't know if you
and building ties with Israel behind, like in secretly and so on, while they're claiming they're supporting the Palestinians.
Yeah, so there is lots of actually our enemies within. It's not Israel, it's not the U.S. I mean, our main enemies, the U.S. and Israel. But what's stopping us from fighting and defeating the enemy is the enemy from within. That's the Arab regimes and our new traitors who are claiming responsibility for the Palestinians.
And internalized colonialism.
Yes. You're going to be on plenary too, I believe, Palestinian representation.
I think it's Saturday afternoon.
And the right of return, raising our voices in the Shatat in North America. Just to give our listeners some, this was one of many other workshops that are going to be held at the conference.
And you're giving the keynote address tomorrow night, right? Yes. I'm looking forward to that,
Thanks. But the speakers, you'll have you and Karmana Bilsi, I believe.
Yeah, from Oxford, and Abdulrazak Takriti from Sheffield University in Britain,
That's going to be a great panel, and it'll be moderated by Jacqueline Hossari, I believe.
Right.
So we encourage our listeners to come and show support and listen to all these. I mean, because we need basically our people to give their perspective, and but we really ask our supporters also to come and give some feedback. We don't want like the left in general is doing, tell us what to do, because that's part of the colonialist mentality anyway. Because we want them to show solidarity with us rather than tell us what to do, because we know our struggle, like you said, more than anybody else, and we are the ones under the gun, And in Arabic we say the one whose
hand is in fire is different than the one whose hand is in water,
in Arabic it says, the ones under the whiplash is not like the one who's counting them.
Exactly. definitely. Very true.
Yeah. So, I'd like to give you one final word for our listeners, and again, we encourage our people to come to UBC, the Buchanan A. It'll be all the sessions at Buchanan A, including the opening session tomorrow, Friday, at 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right. Yes. Well, the only thing I would say is that I'm very optimistic. I believe that we, at the end of the day, justice will prevail. People have struggled historically, and people continue to struggle. We have so many examples from history where, yes, sometimes you do suffer a setback, but you end up being victorious because justice is on your side and because people refuse to be shackled. So we will be victorious. We will achieve justice. It takes a longer time. It would be best if we can. It doesn't take us so long, but I am convinced that we will be victorious. We will prevail.
And the important issue for us and everybody else is to establish equality, because no people would like to be under the gun or under the control of other. I think one great philosopher said, "A nation that oppresses other nation is not free."
Of course, it's not free, and that's why, by the way, the Israelis are also talking about security and so on. I mean, part of it is because they pretend that they are being threatened by the Palestinians, but I think it's also psychological in the sense that when you can't sleep at peace at night when you know that you are oppressing somebody else, because those people you're oppressing will rise, and they rise all the time to be able to liberate themselves. So if you are oppressing people, your day will come.
Yeah, thank you, Rabab, and the future is for all the oppressed, and keep up the good work, and we looking forward to hearing you on Saturday.
Thank you so much, Hannah, and I'm really happy and honored to be on your program.
Have a good evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
And that was Hannah Kawas talking with Rabab Abdulhadi, both of whom will be presenters at the upcoming Palestinian Shatat Conference this weekend in Vancouver. And with that, we conclude another edition of The Voice of Palestine. I've been your co-host, Marian Kawas, and our final piece of music is by Lebanese singer Ahmed Kabbour. They Called Me a Refugee. And we dedicate it to the Palestinian diaspora, to all those Palestinians who will return to their homeland.
شمس المغرب والعالي وأنا ما بعرف من الشمس إلا شمس الأغاني ما بعرف شمس فلسطين ولشروق الشمس بياكل قاعد برسم صورة شمس جرب الدم كفافة وعيها وإلا شمسي شمسي فلسطين شمسي الله